The burning started in his soles, a slow, insidious fire that crept up his legs each night, leaving him tossing and turning a prisoner in his own bed. At 69, Martin had already accepted that his legs would never feel the same again. The numbness, the burning at night. Doctors told him it was just diabetic neuropathy, something he'd have to live with. But what they didn't know was that Martin was about to change everything. And it all started with a cup of tea. It wasn't a sudden dramatic event. It was a whisper, at first easily dismissed. A slight tingling in his toes, like pins and needles after sitting too long. Then a dull ache settled in a persistent throb that seemed to burrow deep into the bones of his feet. He tried to ignore it, chalking it up to age, to the long walks he still enjoyed, to the simple wear and tear of a life well lived. But the whispers grew louder, the ache more insistent, until they became a roar that consumed his nights. Then one morning, the roar turned to silence. He swung his legs out of bed, ready to start the day, and placed his right foot on the floor. Nothing. No sensation. No pressure. Just emptiness. He stumbled, grabbing the edge of the dresser for support. Panic bloomed in his chest, cold and sharp. He looked down. His foot was there, seemingly normal. But it felt disconnected. He shuffled to the mirror, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He leaned closer, peering at his right foot. There it was, a small dark spot near his heel, a tiny bruise almost insignificant. But Martin knew. He knew what that meant. He'd seen pictures. He'd read the pamphlets. It was the beginning. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and quiet desperation. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the waiting room. He sat stiffly on a plastic chair, flipping through a dog-eared magazine, trying to appear calm. He wasn't. He was terrified. When the nurse finally called his name, her voice was kind but firm. She led him to a small examination room, the air thick with the same antiseptic scent. She took his vitals, asked a few perfunctory questions, and then examined his foot. She didn't even need to say it. He saw it in her eyes, the pity, the concern, the underlying warning. She just looked at him and said, "You need to take this seriously, or you might lose that foot." Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Lose his foot. The thought was a physical blow, leaving him breathless and reeling. He pictured himself hobbling around on crutches, his life irrevocably altered. He imagined the pain, the limitations, the constant reminder of his failing health. Martin had done everything the doctors told him. He diligently cut back on sugar, sacrificing his beloved apple pie and evening cookies. He dutifully swallowed the metformin, the tiny pills that were supposed to regulate his blood sugar. He'd even gone on walks, forcing himself to move, even when his legs screamed in protest. But the pain, the numbness, it kept getting worse. The dark spot on his heel grew larger, more menacing. He went to a specialist, a stern-faced doctor, with a wall full of diplomas and a detached bedside manner. The specialist examined his legs, tapped his feet with a reflex hammer, and reviewed his charts. "Your nerves are damaged," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Diabetic neuropathy. It's progressive. We can try to manage the pain, but the damage is likely permanent. You might need stronger meds, or even surgery." Martin stared at his charts, a jumble of numbers and medical jargon that seemed to mock him. He felt a wave of despair wash over him. How had it come to this? How did I go from being a healthy husband and grandfather to this? He thought of Clara, his wife of 45 years, her face etched with worry. He thought of his grandchildren, their bright smiles, and boundless energy. He wasn't ready to become a burden. He wasn't ready to give up. But he knew he needed something different. The pills and the platitudes weren't working. He needed something more. One night, unable to sleep, the burning in his legs, a relentless torment, Martin found himself scrolling through old health videos on his laptop. He'd tried everything else, so why not this? He sifted through countless advertisements and dubious claims, his hope dwindling with each click. Then he came across a clip with a title that caught his eye. "This ancient tea heals nerves and balances blood sugar." He paused his skepticism, battling with a flicker of hope. It sounded too good to be true. But he was desperate. He clicked. The video featured a woman with kind eyes and a calming voice. She spoke about Fenugreek tea, an herb used for centuries in traditional medicine to regulate blood sugar and reduce inflammation. She explained that fenugreek seeds were packed with beneficial compounds that could help alleviate the symptoms of diabetic neuropathy. According to the video, fenugreek seeds help lower insulin resistance, improve blood circulation, and even support nerve regeneration. Martin listened intently, his initial skepticism slowly giving way to cautious optimism. He researched the claims online, finding a few studies that seemed to support the video's assertions. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it offered a glimmer of hope. He was still skeptical, but he was also curious. He had nothing to lose. The next day, he drove to a local herb shop, a small fragrant haven filled with jars of dried leaves and exotic spices. He picked up a bag of organic fenugreek seeds, carefully examining the label. He felt a strange sense of anticipation, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. That evening, he followed the instructions he'd seen in the video. He boiled a teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in a cup of water for 10 minutes. He strained the tea, carefully discarding the seeds. He added a little lemon to improve the taste. It wasn't delicious. It had a slightly bitter, earthy flavor that took some getting used to, but it felt healing. As he sipped the warm liquid, he closed his eyes and imagined the tea working its magic, soothing his inflamed nerves, improving his circulation, and bringing relief to his aching legs. For the next 3 weeks, Martin drank a cup of fenugreek tea every morning before breakfast. He made it a ritual, a moment of quiet contemplation before the chaos of the day began. He also started incorporating other healthy habits into his routine. Massaging his feet with warm coconut oil, gently kneading the soles and toes to stimulate circulation. Stretching for 10 minutes each night, focusing on his legs and feet to improve flexibility and reduce stiffness. And most importantly, cutting back on processed carbs and seed oils, replacing them with whole, unprocessed foods. He knew it wouldn't be a quick fix. He knew it would take time and consistency, but he was determined to take control of his health. He was determined to fight back against the diabetes that was slowly stealing his life. On the 5th day, Martin noticed something. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. But the pins and needles feeling in his toes, it wasn't as sharp. It was still there, but it felt less intense. He didn't dare to get his hopes up. He'd had too many false starts, too many moments of fleeting optimism that had ultimately ended in disappointment. But a tiny seed of hope had been planted, and he nurtured it carefully. By the end of the 2nd week, he could stand barefoot again without wincing. He could walk around the house without feeling like he was walking on broken glass. The burning in his legs hadn't completely disappeared, but it was significantly reduced. He was sleeping better, waking up feeling more rested and energized. His wife Clara noticed the change too. One morning she looked at him across the breakfast table and said, "You're walking straighter, Martin," and smiling again. Martin smiled too. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of lightness, a renewed sense of hope. The tea, the massage, the stretching, the dietary changes, they were working. He was making progress. So what made fenugreek so powerful? What was it about this ancient herb that could offer relief where modern medicine had failed? Studies show it's rich in 4-hydroxysoleucine, which increases insulin sensitivity, helping the body use insulin more effectively to regulate blood sugar levels. Alkaloids that reduce nerve inflammation, soothing the damaged nerves and alleviating the pain and numbness associated with neuropathy. And fiber, which slows down glucose absorption after meals, preventing the blood sugar spikes that can exacerbate diabetic symptoms. In one clinical study, people who consumed fenugreek daily saw lower fasting blood sugar, improved nerve function, and reduced diabetic complications after 8 weeks. It wasn't magic. It was nature plus consistency. It was the power of small, sustainable changes that over time could have a profound impact on his health. 1 month later, Martin returned to the clinic. He dreaded the appointment, but he knew he had to face the music. He sat in the same plastic chair, flipping through the same dog-eared magazine, trying to appear calm. But this time, he felt different. He felt stronger, more hopeful. The same nurse who warned him before about the potential loss of his foot examined him again. She carefully inspected the dark spot on his heel, her expression unreadable. She palpated his feet, checking for sensation. Then she looked up at him, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "It's healing. Beautifully," she said. "No new wounds, no worsening damage." And for the first time in 3 years, he could feel his toes again. He wiggled them tentatively, a wave of relief washing over him. Martin nearly cried. He had taken control. He hadn't reversed his diabetes overnight. It was still there lurking beneath the surface. But he had managed to halt its progression. He had found a way to alleviate his symptoms and improve his quality of life. He had taken control, one step at a time. Today, Martin's routine is simple. Morning. Fenugreek tea on an empty stomach. 15-minute walk in sunlight, soaking up the vitamin D and enjoying the fresh air. Small breakfast eggs, avocado, or oatmeal with chia seeds, providing sustained energy and essential nutrients. Midday. Protein-rich lunch, focusing on lean meats, fish or legumes to support muscle mass and maintain stable blood sugar levels. No sugary drinks sticking to water, herbal teas, or unsweetened beverages. Gentle stretching or gardening. Keeping his body active and his mind engaged. Evening. Herbal foot soak with Epsom salt and lavender, soothing his aching feet and promoting relaxation. Light dinner before 7 p.m., giving his body time to digest before sleep. Journaling or reading to calm his nerves, reducing stress and promoting restful sleep. He still drinks fenugreek tea every morning and swears by it. It's become an essential part of his daily ritual, a reminder of his commitment to his health. If I had waited any longer, Martin says, I might have lost my foot. Or worse. He looks at the camera with a mix of strength and softness. He's not trying to sell anyone anything. He's simply sharing his story, hoping that it might inspire others. I'm not telling you to skip your medicine, he says, his voice firm. But don't ignore nature either. Don't dismiss the power of simple natural remedies. He believes healing doesn't always come in a bottle. Sometimes it's brewed, steeped, and sipped slowly. He pauses, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. And don't underestimate the power of a good foot massage. If you're living with diabetes or neuropathy, maybe this is your sign to look deeper, to ask questions, to try gentle things, to believe that your body can change, because Martin's did. He proved that it's never too late to take control of your health to find your own path to healing. But Martin's journey wasn't just about fenugreek tea and foot massages. It was about something deeper, something more profound. He hadn't just found a way to manage his symptoms. He had rediscovered his connection to nature, to his own body, and to his own inner strength. He had learned to listen to the whispers of his body, to trust his intuition, and to believe in the power of healing. He finally understood that true wellness wasn't just the absence of disease, but the presence of vibrant health, vitality, and joy. So how did Clara, a registered nurse skeptical of anything outside of modern medicine, react to Martin's newfound health kick? And what unexpected challenges did Martin face when he tried to share his story with others? Challenges that forced him to question everything he thought he knew about the healthcare system.